Oh my goodness, last time Joey actually swallowed his key and he was in the nurse's office and she tried to get him to throw it up, but that didn't work. So, the principal is here. We're going to find out where she's taking him. Joey, you need a little extra help, she said as we walked down the main hallway. Think of it this way. Students who have trouble with math get extra help. Or if you're having trouble reading, we give them reading help. I can read fine, I said. That's right, she said, and patted my head. But you still can't sit still very long and keep your mind on your work. So we're giving you some sitting help. We went down a set of stairs to the basement. Are we going to visit the janitor? I asked. No, she replied. This summer we put in a special education room to help out kids who need some extra help or attention. I heard about it, I said. Mrs. Maxey said I was going to be sent there if I didn't settle down. She was right, Mrs. Jarzab replied. Then she opened a door and we went into a big, bright yellow room that still smelled like fresh paint. Everyone is very friendly, she said, so don't be afraid. You'll probably know some of the children. But it was hard not to be scared. There were a few kids from upstairs, but the room was mostly filled with hurt kids and slow kids and kids who steered their wheelchairs with their chins. Kids who walked and talked funny and were brought to school in their own special bus or in special cars from home. I always wondered where they went once they arrived. Now I knew. Plus there were a lot of women hovering around who turned out to be the moms, helping the teacher with their kids. It was pretty surprising to me that they weren't at work because mine was always working. But I guess these moms had a whole job just taking care of their kids, which is why I didn't belong there. Otherwise my mom couldn't work. Can I go back to class now? I asked Mrs. Jarzab. After a while, she replied. First, I need to introduce you to Mrs. Howard. I looked away. Far away in the shiny corner of the room, because even my grandma taught me that it wasn't polite to stare at some kids. Then I looked back, and a few of them were looking at me, which was okay because I was normal. I waved at them, and they waved in return, some better than others, and I felt a little more relaxed, thinking they were nice. I only broke a few rules, I said to the principal. There's nothing wrong with me but that. I know, she said, but we're going to help you learn not to break them. I already learned that. I'll never swallow another key again, I promise. I'm sure you won't, she replied. Just then Mrs. Howard walked over and smiled at me. This is the student I spoke to you about, Mrs. Jarzab said to her. She turned to me. Joey, I want you to listen to Mrs. Howard and do everything she tells you to do. We're going to give you a little extra help with sitting still and staying on task. I felt like some kind of bad dog that had pooped all over the carpet, eaten the slippers, and attacked the mailman, and was now being sent to obedience school. Mrs. Howard led me by my hand to the tall metal chair in the corner of the room. This, she said, is the big, quiet chair. I call it step number 1. The first thing I want to find out is how long you can sit still. I climbed up into the giant chair and sat back and just stared at her. I must have felt pretty calm on the outside, like I was really normal, and this was all a big mistake because she smiled at me and gave me a dopey picture book to read. But inside my body, I felt like a big bottle of warm Coke when you drop it in the grocery store and it begins to fizz out the top like a bomb about to blow. Then she went back to help some kid who still had a bicycle helmet on and had fallen over. I flipped through the book so fast I couldn't tell you a thing about it, except that it was made out of paper. Then I picked at my finger bandage until I had it unrolled, and then I started rocking back and forth, but the chair couldn't rock. So I heaved myself from side to side. It still didn't move. I gripped the arms and jerked myself around and hung way over the arms like some rodeo rider on a wild bull. Does Joey have a problem sitting still? But the chair didn't budge an inch. When I looked down at the legs, I saw it was bolted to the floor. Bolted as if I was some kind of circus freak. So I rocked even harder. Then took the heels of my shoes and kicked at the legs, and since it was metal, it started clanging really loud with the heating pipes, and that's when Mrs. Howard came dashing back over. She put her hands on my knees, and I slowed down for a moment. Then she reached down and untied my laces. She held my sneakers in her hand and said, I'll be right back. She went into a closet and returned with a pair of those fuzzy bunny rabbit slippers. the kind with the big buck teeth on the toes and long ears you can trip over. She put them on my feet and said, "Okay, you can kick the chair all you want, and every time you come here until you can sit still and stop kicking, you'll have to wear these slippers." Over her shoulder, some of the other moms were looking at me and they had tired faces. Not tired and mad like I'd screwed up somehow and they were upset. It was different. They were tired from being so sad, and now they were sad more because I was screwed up too, and they felt bad for me like they felt for their own kids because they figured I wasn't ever going to get better. And it made me so mad to be stared at like some hopeless kid that I kicked away at the chair legs until my heels were so sore that they were bruised and it hurt to kick. Then suddenly, it just seemed like all the energy drained out of me, and the yellow walls were so bright I closed my eyes and fell asleep. Toward the end of the day, Mrs. Howard woke me up and said it was time for me to go back to Mrs. Maxey's class so I could get my homework assignments. I did, only I was still wearing those buck-toothed rabbit slippers, and then I shuffled into class, rubbing my eyes. Seth Justman pointed at me and started to snicker, and the whole class cracked up, and Mrs. Maxey had to clap her hands to settle everyone down. Then she led me to my seat. She gave me a "I mean business" look and tapped on my tasks list. "Remember, Joey, stick to the rules and you won't get into trouble." Even though she was being nice, I didn't know what to say, and I put my head down on my desk. It felt so cool against my cheek, and I wanted to sleep some more. "And I think you owe the class an apology for being disruptive earlier." "I'm sorry I swallowed my key," I said a little too loudly without raising my head. "Really, I'm sorry." I didn't feel sorry, and I could feel myself just wanting to run and jump. So I hooked my slippers around the front legs of the desk and tried hard to look at one solid thing, like the big jack-o'-lantern at the window, and get a two-handed grip on my desk, because if I slipped and lost concentration and didn't pay attention to my highlighted tasks, Mrs. Maxey might have no other choice but to give up on me for good and send me full-time down to the special ed center. And there would be nothing I could do about it, or my mom anyway, or anyone, because I'd been warned so many times. There's a file on my bad behavior as thick as the phone book. So I hung onto my desktop, and with all my might, I held myself in my seat as if some giant was holding me. And I don't think I even breathed until the bell rang, and I blasted out of my seat and headed for home, still wearing those dumb slippers. I was sitting on the porch when Mom returned from work, and I just mixed her a drink and didn't whisper a word about what happened today. But she found out later when Mrs. Jarzab called the house later that night. How is Joey gonna get better? How's he gonna be able to behave? I don't know.